Pick up after you.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I just have a couple minutes of introduction to our community of practice, which is about building resilient communities. We are part of the South Central Climate Adaptation Science Center. And the South Central CASC covers a 4-state region: New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. And most of the employees of the CASC are at the University of Oklahoma, which is the host organization in Norman, Oklahoma. I happen to be in Albuquerque. And there are other consortium members throughout the 4-state region, different universities and other partners. And the CASCs, this is one of 9 regional CASCs in the country, all funded by the U.S. Geological Survey. Our CASC is the only one actually that has communities of practice, which are set up to bring together different partners within the CASC to focus on specific issues. And this community of practice is about building resilient communities. And the emphasis of our community of practice is really about how people on the ground experience environmental change in their everyday lives, including climate change, and how they interpret, respond, and adapt to those changes. We also talk about intersections among climate change, other aspects such as development patterns and ways of living, and social and economic changes. I am one of the co-chairs of the group, as is Dr. Caitlin Rotler, who is on the call but a little under the weather today, so won't be chiming in quite so much. And we have a number of members, as I said, from different mostly universities within the South Central CASC. I really want to thank Aaron Russell, who is a postdoc at Oklahoma State, one of our community of practice members. This is the first in what we hope will be a webinar series, hearing especially from community members about these topics, and really trying to amplify community voices in our conversations about responding to climate change. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure today to introduce our speakers to you. Again, my name is Aaron Russell. I'm a postdoctoral fellow with the South Central Climate Adaptation Center and a member of the community practice. I'm housed at Oklahoma State in natural resource ecology and management. So it's nice to see everybody's face and get you guys out here for what we hope is the start of a really good webinar series. We have 2 speakers this afternoon. The first is Dr. Joaquin Murrieta-Saldivar. Dr. Murrieta-Saldivar is a graduate of the University of Arizona, where he did a Master's of Science in Natural Resources and Agricultural Economics, as well as a doctoral degree in Renewable Natural Resource Studies, with an emphasis on management, policy, and economics of natural resources. He has worked in this space for a while now and has most recently moved from working with Watershed Management Group to the Borderlands Restoration Network. He uses his experience and expertise to create a culture for restoration and adaptation to extreme weather conditions in the borderlands region of the Sonoran Desert. And our second speaker today is Ms. Flor Sandoval. She is a graduate of the Eller College of Management at the University of Arizona, where she received her bachelor's degree in business administration. Flor Sandoval works with the Sonoran Environmental Research Institute, where she began as a volunteer in 2009 and is currently a program director. She oversees the day-to-day operations of the SERI programs and projects. She has broad experience in this space and has had trainings with HUD, EPA, and OSHA, among others. And she serves as, or she has served, she may still serve as water conservation specialist at the Landscaping Advisory Committee for the City of Tucson. She enjoys working with the community and creating a sustainable and safe place for all. So again, we're very happy to have you both with us. We're going to start off with Dr. Murrieta-Saldivar as our first speaker. And what we're going to do is we will hold a question and answer session after both speakers have presented. If you so choose, you can leave a question in the chat and we will monitor that and try to get to it at the end. And again, thank you everybody and welcome. And I guess with that, we can go ahead and get started whenever you're ready, Joaquin.
Gracias, Aaron, and thank you everyone for being here. Yes, I'm Joaquin. I'm speaking to you from Tucson, Arizona, which is a border city with Mexico, with the state of Sonora. So what you're going to be experiencing on some of the pictures I'm going to show you is some of the work we've been doing with with urban communities like Tucson, as well as with rural communities like in the San Pedro watershed section. And very excited to be talking to you about this climate adaptation. I was with Watershed Management Group for the last 9 years, and that's something we emphasize, or I emphasize, what is the role of the urban environment in terms of watershed health? What is it that we can do? Because most of us practitioners on resource management, particularly with water, we go out of the city to do a lot of restoration, to do a lot of work. Then again, we blame everybody, and like the agricultural sector, like the mining sector, but we never talk about the city. What is the role of the city in climate change, in climate adaptation? What is it that we can do? That's why I joined Watershed Management Group, because we give a huge emphasis on the urban environment and what can we do. With that, we created, for example, an industrial watershed on rainwater harvesting. We created a whole program for the community members of Tucson to build your own basin with the thinking of harvesting some of the rainwater so they can plant a tree and it doesn't require irrigation. So it's a native plant that will provide shade. So I'm going to share some of that experience and how that adaptability looks on the ground, looks on an urban environment. Because my question, as usual, is climate change happens because we have so many things. We have little phones, like they get hot. We have cars that they emit a lot of stuff. We have moving parts that generate heat, but also we have cities that generate heat. We have hard surfaces. We have the street, the sidewalk, the roof, and all that is heat related. And all that is in how do we live in the city? My question is, what type of city do we want? What type of city can we create? What is the natural city that we can create so our cities are cool, our cities are natural? We have natural wildlife corridors, for example. We have shaded streets. We have, so let's show you how that might look. And it's actually already looking like that here in Tucson, thanks to several organizations that are working on this. So I'm assuming you're seeing that screen. And we start with that. What happened when it rains in your city? Look at that image. That's on the city of Hermosillo, where I grew up. From the right to the left, that's actually, sorry, that's Tucson. That is Tucson. From the right to the left, you have the Catalina Mountains. That's like 12 miles. And so 12 miles of rain. And if you look at the width of that rain, it might be like around a mile or two. And the height is the same, like a mile or 2 miles high. So you have a cube of water that is hitting the city. And that's the first question. What happened with that water when it hits the city? And it's been hitting, that water has been hitting the city for quite some time. So that's the first observation to have. And with that water, we can do so many things. We can actually have houses, units that produce water in the sense of harvesting the rain. We have developed homes that are self-sufficient on water. So they are not hooked to the city water. And what that means is we're not bringing water from the Colorado River to these houses. So what that means is we're not using electricity and we're not using all that energy to move that water. So we are decentralizing the water sources for this city. And that's an amazing thing that can be done. We done calculations with all the water that hits the city of Tucson a year is enough water to provide for all the needs of the city. So with that water, in the process of harvesting that rain, we can actually do a lot of things. So I'm talking about the huge watershed of the Colorado River. Within that watershed, there is two sub-watersheds here to the right, which is the Santa Cruz watershed and the San Pedro watershed. I'm going to be concentrated here on those two watersheds and what's happening at the city components as well as the rural components. This is Tucson. This is one street of Tucson. And you can see all the cities in the world, they have streets. And those streets, for the most part, are black. And those streets generate heat. And I like to say, if you are on a desert city, where would you rather walk? On the left, where the shade of that Palo Verde is, or on the right, where there is no shade? Everybody's going to walk on the left. Why? Because it's cooler. And it's not the shade that we're interested in. It's the evapotranspiration that that tree actually provides. And having trees in the middle of the street is changing the way our city looks. It's changing the way how the city is being cooled down because of the evapotranspiration elements. So the more trees we have that provide shade on the street, on the sidewalk, on the home, the cooler our city becomes. So that's one of the adaptations we're actually doing in Tucson. We created a program at WMG that we call it BYU. That with a shovel, with a rake, with a cup of coffee, you can actually create a basin in your property. If you have a property, if you don't have a property, you can actually do a basin on the right of way. You can actually do a basin on the park. And do you need permits for that? Yes, but sometimes you can't just do it. And nobody's going to care except you. So you need to take care of that tree and that little basin. So seeing this, it's an amazing element of climate adaptation. Why climate adaptation? Because this is the most diverse desert in the world. This is the Sonoran Desert. And we're lucky that we have 2 rainy seasons in this environment. So rain in the summer and rain in the winter that can provide water for these trees. It can provide water for your home. It can provide water for all kinds of benefits to the city. And also make it fun. Also make it very affordable, very attainable. As I mentioned, with a shovel and with a rake, you can actually harvest a lot of water and you can actually transform the way the city looks like. And that way, you're using rainwater to irrigate plants. And so transformations like this, I used to manage the schoolyard program in the city of Tucson, a watershed management group. And we created policies, we created all kinds of interesting programs to the sense that the federal level was sponsoring this through NOAA in terms of climate adaptation, to the sense of Tucson Water was sponsoring 10 schools a year to transform schools like this. First of all, schools are so ugly. Look at that. That's the main entrance of Montessori school. So if you go there every day as a kid, are you excited to come here? Of course you're not. I mean, it's ugly. It doesn't provide any benefit. It's just, oh my God, I'm going to school again. I suppose the students transform this from that to this. In 2 years, you have this effect of the rain garden. This rain garden became an example, became to transform different schools here in Tucson. So it's amazing the shade that these trees provided, that these trees, that these plants are providing. The students now are monitoring the heat elements on the school, the heat elements on the building. So the trees are already providing shade to the building, so it's less cooling in the building. So it's very interesting to see that the students are actually implementing this, are continue monitoring in terms of heat island, and are talking with their parents to implement these rain gardens at the school. Community takes so many shapes. It's just not the house. It's so many elements where you can be working. It's like the street, it's like the church, it's like the park, it's like the churches, and community is already there. So with those elements, we are transforming our community in terms of climate adaptation to increase the canopy of our city. This is my house as an example. And these changes happen gradually. It's not that I transform my house in a year. It took me 5 years to do this. So what are the sources of water? Here to the right is you already saw a little blue line that is coming in. So I harvest the water from the rain, from the street, and I inundated these basins. That's how that basin looks like. So right there, I'm infiltrating around 1,500, I'm harvesting around 1,500 gallons of water in front of my house, just on that source of water from the street. And it provides all kinds of benefits in terms of humidity, water infiltration, native plants, additional hosting of different pollinators and that type of thing. But it also rains on the roof, and there is additional water harvesting mechanisms that we call basins or berms or earthworks that are capturing, harvesting the water from the roof, from the street, infiltrating water right there in front of my house. And there are technologies, there are engineering that you need to be aware of that. So that way you don't flood my house, for example. But also you see additional observations that that arrow that I shows there was escaping from me some water in that sidewalk. So I created 3 additional mini basins that are captured that way. So there is all kinds of opportunities at the home level to harvest the rain, to create pollinator gardens, to not to have bare grounds or gravel grounds. And that way we are cooling my house, we are cooling the street, we are cooling the city with elements like this. And now there are so many opportunities for any household to do this type of gardens at the city level. And so those are the type of policies that we've been able to create with Tucson Water, with Pima County, with other nonprofits. So here in the back of the house, we have also an additional technique, which is an active system. You harvest the rain and you put it on a tank. And that tank that is on the lower corner to the left provides water to irrigate a vegetable garden. So the vegetables I'm growing in the back of my house, they are fed with rainwater. This is important again, because I'm consuming the water from my lot, from the roof. I'm not stealing water from nature. When it rains in nature, 50% of the water infiltrates, particularly in the Southwest US. And 10% is surface runoff, and 40% is evapotranspiration. So when we put hard surfaces in the city, things change to the point that 55% is surface runoff. So it's a great opportunity to harvest that water and not to use water from the top to irrigate plants. So this house is becoming a production unit of water. So we're not consuming that much water. In average, 80 gallons per person a day happen in here in Tucson. In my house, we are about 50 gallons per person a day. With the thinking if every home, if every resident in Tucson becomes a hydro local, meaning using 40 gallons per person a day, we are within the means of our local watershed, which is the Santa Cruz watershed. And with that thinking, we can actually restore rivers, we can actually have green cities, we can actually diminish the heat island effect. So those are the programs that we have been able to establish at WMG, at Watershed Management Group. And so it's been very interesting to see how the community has been adapting these technologies to transform their homes into a productive units of water. And in addition to the home unit, we also been working on rural elements, particularly with the ranching community on both sides of the border. The ranching community, in addition to producing beef, to producing meat, they produce so many benefits to society, like water, like carbon sequestration. And here, for example, look at the conditions of the soil in here. What happened when it rains in here? Well, all the soil goes away. It's a lot of heat production units here. So with simple rock structures, we are actually diminishing erosion, infiltrating water, increasing the vegetation cover of these productive lands. So that way there is additional carbon sequestration in here, and it's less radiation of heat to the atmosphere. So those little structures that you have, those are that's how they look on the ground. This is like a one rock dance here on the top. This is more like a gabion, this structure that you hear closer to that wheel that is there. I think we one of the wheelbarrows we had there, it was busted. So this is how we end that day of work. But check this out, on the first monsoon rain, we finished this in May, and by September it was looking like that. So with those rock structures, we are diminishing erosion, we are increasing the sponge effect of the soils, we are infiltrating water, and now I am on the region of the Sky Island region, which is the origins of water for the Santa Cruz River, for the San Pedro River, and 5 more watersheds that flow into Sonora. So this is where water originates for the city of Tucson. So it's very interesting to look into this, because the city of Tucson just receives the water. So what is their responsibility in terms of being more efficient, being more economical on the uses of water? So that way we just don't receive the water. We manage the water correctly. And that's what the rainwater harvesting does in our homes. And this is just another effect of one of those gabions on the first monsoon rain. And we also excluded cows from there. This is an experimental plot. This is a 5-hectare plot, but it's just to look at the resilience of the landscape. In addition to that, we also did a bunch of intensive cattle rotation. With a simple electric fence, you can rotate cows every 2 days. We're doing that in this plot. So that way, that's why it's very intensive, but also it has an intensive follow of the land. We have like over a year of rest for the land, and that way the grasslands can establish themselves in that year. So cows will come back to these plots after that year. So it's very nice to experiment or to see. I mean, this is just not an experiment. This is already a management style of cows in these grasslands of the San Pedro River. Same conditions here, same as you saw with the rock structures at home. We're doing this at a huge scale on a tributary of the San Pedro. These little tributaries, they were little, but because of erosion, because mismanagement of cows, they become huge gullies. So that's why we are working on that, to restore that process of water infiltration and having the sponge on the ground. And this gabion that we did is doing its work. It is maintaining the soil on the ground. It's I don't have a picture of that, but in this sediment that you're going to see, that you see here in the front, it's those grasses are already being established. We didn't plant grasses, the seeds are there. So next year, this is going to be fully covered with grasses. And the challenge here is to diminish these head cuts that you can see to the left of the image here. So with that, we're doing a lot of climate adaptation, a lot of sensibilities on how we produce things, a lot of, and that's part of the, what I like to call the culture of conservation, the culture of restoration. Why is it that only the nonprofits, the academics, sometimes the government are doing this type of work? Why is not the community doing this type of work? This should be part of their business plan. This should be part of the culture of productivity. If you want cows, well, how do you amend the soil? How do you work with the soil? How do you work with the grasses? All that happens in this little blue dot. I always like to end or to start with this communication. This is home. This is where we are. This is the blue dot in the universe. And Carl Sagan talks better than I do on here. The blue dot in the universe, that's our home. That's our home full of water. So what we're doing here is to cooling our planet, is to infiltrating additional water, to restore rivers, is to have productive units of water. So that way our planet is healing. Our planet is maintaining certain level of temperature, because our cities generate a lot of heat, our nuded soils generate a lot of heat, and we're trying to mitigate that with the best management practices that we have at hand. I'm going to stop there. These are my contacts. This is a new position for me. I'm the conservation director at Borderlands Restoration Network. I'm based here in Tucson, Arizona, but my office, our office is in Patagonia, Arizona, where we're doing a lot of this type of work as well on both sides of the border in Mexico and in the US. And actually, tomorrow I'm traveling to Torreon, Coahuila, to train the county and the state on green storm infrastructure, on how do we create natural cities. That's how I frame it now. In terms of green storm infrastructure, I'm talking more about the natural cities that we actually need to start building or to have already with us. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop sharing these images, and hopefully I didn't go over my time.
Nope, I think we're doing really good. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, and I have questions at the end, as I hope some other people do as well. Next, we're going to have Flor Sandoval from the Sonoran Environmental Research Institute. And before, Flor, before you kick off, I just wanted to say that we forgot to thank one person at the beginning of this. We have an undergraduate at the University of Oklahoma named Luke Kerr, who helped us out a whole lot by setting up the flyer and making sure that the form that everybody filled out on Google to get here was available and that everything worked out well. So we owe him a lot, and I just wanted to make sure we said thank you in the middle of our recording. With that, I will go ahead and I'm going to mute myself, and Flor, take it away.
Great, thank you, Aaron. So let me share here. And okay, so let me make sure I bring you over here. Okay, perfect. So thank you again. And my name is Flor Sandoval. I'm the program director at Sonoran Environmental Research Institute. We go by SERI. And today I'll be talking about our rainwater harvesting program, how it started. So I'll give you some history, and I'm gonna briefly touch on the other programs that we have. But first, let me begin by telling you who we are. So we're a small nonprofit organization located in Tucson, Arizona. We work primarily on the southwest of the United States, mainly focused on Tucson, and we have done some work in Nogales, Arizona, Patagonia, Tubac, which are the closest small towns that we have near to the border. We have been working in the community since 1994, I've been with SETI since 2009. So I have had the opportunity to see how many of these programs have evolved over the year. And one of them is the rainwater harvesting program. We mainly work with low-income communities and marginalized communities. Our focus is to create a sustainable world where there is environmental justice and opportunity for all people. So that's where we primarily focus on, and we focus on not only the rainwater harvesting aspect of the homes, but we see the community, the house, the people that live in the homes, and we try to provide or reduce the barriers that they continuously face. So here are some of our programs. We have the water conservation program, which is covers the rainwater harvesting program. We're also working with, this is a joint program with Tucson Water, which is the water company here in Tucson. We're also developing a gray water program in this moment to be able to offer gray water to the communities too. And we have the high efficiency clothes washer program. This program consists on replacing clothes washers. Currently, Tucson Water has a rebate program for people that are able to go and purchase a new clothes washer that it's high efficiency. So they can apply for a rebate through Tucson Water, but we're going one step farther with that. And together with Tucson Water, we're gonna be providing clothes washers to low-income families. Instead of paying or going through the rebate, they're only gonna have a small amount of money to pay. We're gonna give them 0 interest loans to be able to get those clothes washers in their homes. Then we also have the Healthy Home program. For this program, we partner with the city of Tucson. It's specifically the lead hazard control program. So if there are homes built pre-1978, if they meet the requirements for the lead program, we can refer them to the city of Tucson and they will get a lead testing in their home. If they find any lead at the house, then the city will remove the lead. So it's lead safe. We also have a fair housing program. It's we provide outreach and education. We do fair housing classes. We focus on the 7 federal protective classes. There are free workshops online, English and Spanish. And also we have a fair housing hotline. So if anybody is suffering from fair housing, they can give us a call. And we partner with Southwest Fair Housing Council in Arizona. So all the phone calls, the claims that we get, we refer them to Southwest Fair Housing Council and they follow up with the claims. We also have a business assistance program to help the businesses reduce VOC levels at the shop. We're currently working with beauty salons and mechanic shops to assist them through this process. It's a joint program with the University of Arizona and it's funding from NIH, the National Institute of Health. And we also have the Sustainable Energy Program. This program, this has 2 different sides to it. We have an energy efficiency improvement program where we're going into the homes and we're making replacements so the home is more energy efficiency. We can replace ACs, insulate the ceiling if it's not insulated. We can also update their water heater for a higher efficiency one, or we can even do solar water heaters. We have a big list of interventions that we can do in the homes. And lastly, we have the solar empowerment program where we're working again with, most of our programs are based to the low-income communities. So they have to meet a certain income requirements. But this is one of my favorite programs because we are going to the homes. If the family is qualified, we can give them a grant for up to 50% of the cost of the solar system. And we help them get the loan for the other half. We're currently working, it's a joint program with Technicians for Sustainability, a local solar a local solar company in Tucson too. So we have been going with this program for a year, and we recently got or we're about to get more funding from the city of Tucson to be able to expand on this program. So we're gonna be able to get to a lot more families soon. But now I'm gonna jump into the rainwater harvesting program and how it began. So Tucson Water has had a rebate program for many years, where people can install their rainwater harvesting systems, either active or active systems, as Joaquin was showing you in his beautiful pictures. And they could, anybody, it's open for anybody as long as they're Tucson Water residential customers. So they can go in and they can apply for the rebate. But we were seeing that the low income community was not participating in these rebates because they don't have the economic feasibility to be able to pay for these systems up front. So we wanted to create a program for the low income community and to make it accessible to them. So we went and got some funding from EPA to be able to develop and to pilot and develop a rainwater harvesting program. And of course, we wanted to make sure that we develop a program that it was for the community and that it was something worth for the community and covering their needs. So in order to do that, we developed a lot of focus groups within the communities to see what they wanted, how we should be running the program and developing the program. And we were able to do 17 rainwater harvesting installations between active and passive systems during the first year of our program, which was 2015. After that, we saw that the community, we were able to develop the program, and we saw that there was a lot of interest in the community, but they were not able to participate because of the not having the economic possibilities to do it. So we went on and we were able to partner with Tucson Water, and now we have established rainwater harvesting program with the city of Tucson and Tucson Water, where we're able to assist limited income families to install their passive systems or active systems. It is fully funded by Tucson Water program, and we work together with the rebate program. So what we are doing right now is we pay all the upfront costs for the active or passive systems, and then we help the participants claim the rebate. And what we can also offer them grants for up to $750 to cover the cost of the installations, and loans for up to $2,000. And there are 0% interest loans for up to 12 months. So once we go into the home, we help them plan the system. We bring contractors because we don't do the installation, but we bring contractors, we get quotes, the family decides which contractor they want to use, and then we go ahead and pay the contractors, order the cisterns, and bring everything to the home for the installation. Then after the installation is completed, we help the family claim the rebate from Tucson Water. The rebate comes back to us as we're the ones putting all the money up front. So we take the however much the rebate is from their account, and then we give them the grant for up to $750. It basically depends on their income levels. We're using the 200% of the federal poverty level, and they have to be, if they're between 100 and 200% of the federal poverty level, they're able to get a loan for up to $500. But if they are below 100% of the poverty level, then they can get up to $750. And then however much is remaining, we're able to provide them the 0% interest loan, which is revolving funding that we use, and it's fully managed by SETI. So we don't get any banks involved, and everybody qualifies as long as they're meeting the income requirements, and as long as they're Tucson Water residential customers. As part of this program, we also offer free educational workshops in English and Spanish. And we recently added free trees and shrubs for the participants. So anybody that participates in the program is able to get up to 2 trees and 2 shrubs. They're all desert adapted plants. We use different local nurseries in town. and families have a wide variety to choose from. So we have had this program now for, what is it, 7 years. And we have done a total up to, I just updated these numbers yesterday. So we have had a total of 344 rainwater harvesting installations, out of which 248 are active systems. And currently, the active systems are the most popular ones, as you can see. Families really like to see that they can see the tank, they can see where they're harvesting their water, but we're trying to do a lot more emphasis on passive systems now, because we want to make sure that they have their big basins to be able to capture water too. And so that's something that we're slowly putting a lot more emphasis. So hopefully the numbers can even out in the near future. We have been able to give out a total of 281 grants and 171 loans. And some people, in the past, it used to be that the rebate and the grants were enough to cover the cost of the system. But unfortunately, with inflation, everything going up, now most of the clients have to take out a loan. So sometimes that's still in the line of whether they participate or not. So we're trying, in an effort to try to reduce the cost, we also purchase our cisterns in bulk, so we can have them available in a better price for the families that we serve. And you can see the totals that we have spent in the program, in rebates, grants, and loans. And here are some of the barriers that we had with the program. So again, inflation has really shifted the program. And yeah, I remember when even a year ago, families were able to cover the entire cost of the installations just with the rebate and the grant, but now they're taking loans of on average $500 to $1,000, which sometimes it can be a little hard. So we're trying to work that out with them and always looking for better pricing, but there's only so much we're able to do, unfortunately, at this time. We're also talking to see maybe we will higher up the grant amount so more people can benefit from the program. And if they're not able to cover the loan, or they're not comfortable taking out a loan for a rainwater harvesting system, then that we can give them a little more in grants for the implementation of these systems. Also, higher costs resulting in more participants having to take out loans, and many participants don't want to take out loans. So that's why we're trying to discuss that with Tucson Water and the city of Tucson to see if we can hire up those grant monies, which still they're getting a good amount, up to $150, but unfortunately that's not enough to cover the installations at this time. And then from Tucson Water, they can get up to $2,000 in rebate. But it totally depends on the cost of the installations. For example, if it's an active system, if they're installing cisterns that are 600 gallons or bigger, they can get up to $1 per gallon back as the rebate. If they're doing a passive system, it's a little different, but we're working with Tucson Water, so we have more flexibility than the regular Tucson Water customers for passive systems right now, as a way to help the community and make it more attractive to install passive systems. Some of our successes, we have been able to help 344 families. The buying in bulk has always been helpful, so we can get the cisterns at a better cost for the clients. And one thing that's important to mention, we don't charge anything to the clients. So whatever they're paying for their system is because that's what it's costing. If the cistern costs 800, that's what they're gonna pay for the cistern. And then the rest depends on the installation cost and however much the contractors pay. But all of our contractors are aware of the program, and some of them are even willing to give some extra discounts to make the program possible. But as steady, we don't charge any extra money to be able to implement the program for the families. Participants are very happy with the program and pleased to be collecting water. We always recommend them to start small and simple. So they always have the opportunity to come back. So if they want to start with an active system and then they want to do a passive system, they can definitely do that. Or we have some families that want to start with one cistern and then they want to install a second cistern. That's also a possibility. So we try to be flexible with our participants in all of our programs, not only the rainwater harvesting program, because again, we want to make sure that we're creating something sustainable, something that is here that gets to Tucson to stay and not something that goes away. And the only way that we can do that is by working together with the community and developing something based on their needs. So I think that's very important to mention, because that's something that we have been able to create with our rainwater harvesting program. And now we're taking this rainwater harvesting module that we have to module our solar program, which is the new program that I was talking about. And I feel very comfortable that by following this module that has been successful, that we're going to be able to implement some other programs like the solar program that we're modeling, and maybe even the energy retrofit programs that we're starting to work on that too. So yes, and most importantly, we're also increasing tree canopy in Tucson by doing the basins, giving out the trees in desert adapted trees. There we have a lot of families that do ask for fruit trees, and we do have some options, but it's mainly desert adapted. And for the fruit trees that we have, they're also low water use. We have the which one? We have a fig tree that they can do, and there's one more that I don't recall right now, but they have two fruit tree options that are low water use as well, or not as high water use as a citrus tree. Good. So that's all I have for today. Thank you. And if you scan that QR code, it will take you directly to our website where you can learn about our other programs. And if you have any questions regarding the other programs or would like more information, please feel free to reach me. Here is my information too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flor. That was an excellent, I think, complimentary presentation. So I'm glad we got you both in on this, and I'm sure there's lots of questions. And I'll go ahead and just kind of kick off with, first of all, just a thought. And my kind of thought is, as I was watching these presentations and seeing the really beautiful pictures of Joaquin's house and all of these things, is what that immediately kind of tells me when we bring this into an economic conversation, which Flor, you really helped to do, is to say that looks like curb appeal to me. And especially in these really like trying times when people are moving around and maybe having to change their life circumstances, it looks like you guys might be presenting some ways to help with home value in addition to all of these other benefits at a time when people are really worried about the cost of a home or moving or something like that. So that was my initial thought. And then my question is for Joaquin, and I wanted to ask, is there a maintenance aspect to those dams? That's not the word you used, but the rock sort of levees that are being put in, and I know sediment is moving and kind of piling up against the back of them. Do you guys eventually have to go in and take that out, or is it just sort of waiting for the grass to fill in? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It just depends on the scale and the purpose of why are you harvesting the rain. like the ones you saw on the rural area with the ranching community, what we want is for those rock structures to be filled with sediment. So there is no maintenance in that. And actually we don't, some other people plant seed grass in there. And we don't, because the seeds are everywhere. So they just want soil and they just want humidity. So eventually what you're creating is diminishing the downsizing of those gullies that they were not there to begin with. So that way, what Flor and I, we're only doing three things. We're diminishing the speed of water, we're spreading the water, and we're infiltrating the water on a passive system. And with that, you create so many benefits in terms of germination, in terms of water infiltration, and in terms of sponge effect on those soils to harvest, to increase the humidity of that environment.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions from the audience at this point. I see Yvette has her hand up, and I'll be on the lookout for questions in the chat as well.
Great, thank you. And those are great presentations, both of you. I have so many questions and comments, I'm going to have to limit them. So I'm going to start with, I know that there are some states where it is not legal to harvest rainwater. I believe Colorado is one of those. And I'm kind of surprised that in such a dry region where you are that it is. So my question is there a limit to how many people? And I think especially not so much with the passive systems, but with the cisterns, you know, if you're taking that, how much rain can you harvest without that runoff reaching the streams to where you maintain the low flow stream flow that you're going to need for habitat? I think that's one. And if you can squeeze it in, who is responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of the cistern systems once they are installed? Thanks.
Want to talk a little bit about that, Flor?
Sure. So for as far as the size of the cistern, we have a formula that was given to us by, if I recall correctly, it was Tucson Water, the Food Bank, and Watershed Management that helped develop that form. And it takes into consideration the precipitation that we have in Tucson. So we use that formula to calculate how many or how big the cistern should be. And it also takes into consideration the size of the house. And so that's that. And the second part of the question, the maintenance, we have, during our workshops, we teach the families what's the maintenance and what they should be doing. It's not a lot of maintenance in reality that they have to do. It's just cleaning the gutters, cleaning the filters before each rain and after each rain. But other than that, they don't require a lot of maintenance.
Just a little bit on maintenance and scale of things. The nice thing of working at the residence level is that most of the time is the homeowner that does the maintenance, whether it's active, a tank, or a passive, a basin, or a contractor, but they have to pay for it. And we're training contractors, for that matter, here in the city of Tucson to do a good pruning, a good maintaining of the basin, because the industry of landscaping is doing horrible things to the rain gardens, as we call them here in Tucson. So it's a slow change, but also in the sense of scale. And that's a really good problem to have in terms of maintenance. Who maintains the city when you have a bunch of basins that harvest the rain from the street, for example? We've been able to create bike boulevards with trees and things like that. And yes, the city should maintain that, or the county, depending on where you are. But my response to that is, well, that's a good problem to have because you're already doing something in terms of diminishing heat. And yes, you need to invest in maintenance. Yes, it costs money. Yes, you need to send a crew to clean up things. And so with that, and that's the beautiful work of policy that organizations like SETI and WMG and others influence policy for Tucson water. We were able to influence that and created the Green Storm Infrastructure Program for Tucson Water. So now in our water bill, if you're a Tucson Water client, they are charging additional, it's a 13 cents, I think, per cubic foot or 100 cubic foot of water. It's additional 13 cents. And those 13 cents go to the Green Storm Infrastructure to maintain the city. So starting small, starting pre-legal, all these things weren't illegal 15, 20 years ago. And so we were challenging the city, we were challenging the county to look into this. Yes, there are some states like Colorado, like Utah, where they have limits, but also it's not permitted to harvest the rain. But with slow change, we've been able to influence the government and the policy and the funding. So the beautiful work of the nonprofits, and I love saying this, is to put government to work, to work in a correct, efficient, influential way. So I'm very happy to hear that Tucson Water, Pima County, have their own programs for water harvesting, whether it's a residential work, it's a school work, or it's a street work. It's an amazing work they've been doing, but all that is thanks to the radical activism movement that started here in Tucson 15 years ago. And so it's been a slow change in terms of policy, but it's been a tremendous change in terms of community adaptation of water harvesting.
Thank you guys. That answer
So
was
it is education on both fronts, with the community as well as with the government.
excellent. I'm just going to remind people that it's we're about 4 minutes after the top of the hour, and if there are any more questions and the speakers are willing, we can take maybe 1 or 2 more. If anybody needs to go, we understand, and we'll make sure that the speaker's contact information is available so that anybody who's interested, because we're getting some interesting conversation in the chat, can get a hold of you guys. So if there are any other questions, first of all, I guess are Joaquin and Flor, are you guys okay to stick around if there's another question or something? Yeah. Okay. So with that, if there are any other questions, either in the chat or if you want to just pipe up, feel free. Flor, I had another. Oh, it looks like we might have had Jocelyn. I see you. Did you have a question?
Hi, yeah. First of all, thank you for the amazing presentations for both of you. My question is around I was wondering how you can navigate around places where there's long dry seasons, but short wet seasons. So for example, if you do like a cistern in California, Northern California, specifically, where the winter months are the wet months, and you're using that cistern water, the collected rainwater for landscape irrigation. How do you when it's wet during the winter, you don't really need to irrigate, but that's when your cistern is collecting water, but you're not using that water, and so you're not collecting more water for use. But then there's long dry seasons where you use up that cistern water really fast. So how do you navigate around that problem of imbalance?
Well, first of all, that's a very good observation in the sense of how much understanding the rain pattern in the region, in the area where you are. but also understanding native plants that you have, because you're creating a natural system. Yes, the tank can help to store water for future use, and so depending on what are you going to use that tank water for. If you wanted to establish native plants, that's a wonderful use for that tank. If you want to irrigate vegetable gardens, for example, that's where the engineering, as Flor was saying, sizing the tank in the sense of the roof area, the amount of rain that you get a year, and the use for that water. Well, I'm going to have this much plots for vegetable gardening, for example. And then and you start to understand the demand. And so you have, for a square foot of a vegetable garden or a lawn, we don't recommend lawns at all, but for a vegetable garden you need 40 gallons per square foot a year. So based on that, you start sizing your tank as well as sizing your vegetable garden. And it's not going to be, so it just depends on the rain pattern and the use of that water. In terms of climate adaptation, here where we are in the Sonoran Desert and in Tucson, we are experiencing two things. One, the rainy season in the summer is getting later. We used to start getting rain in June. Now we start getting rain in the middle of July. So the rain comes later, but it comes in a shorter period of time with more intensity. So how do we work with that? So that's why the bases become very interesting in the terms of designing, because you're dealing with more force. The water is moving with more energy. So those type of design engineering by understanding the rain patterns, and those patterns are changing. And those changes are something we started to understand. And that's part of the adaptation we're dealing with. Sorry, long answer to that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, that might be, oh, go ahead.
I'll make an observation, something I read on the chat. That rainwater harvesting is just not tanks. And somebody was mentioned, oh my God, I learned something today. It's also the basin, the passive system. So it just depends what is your objective in terms of rainwater harvesting. Me personally, I hate tanks. And I love passive systems because the passive system changed the city, changed the street, changed the way we live, changed the canopy, adapt better for climate adaptation. With the tank, you're using less city water, which is amazing. It's incredible. You can use rainwater to take a shower, for example, to drink water, but the passive system becomes very efficient in the sense of climate adaptation, which is increasing canopy and infiltrating additional water and diminishing flooding, which is happening.
Excellent points. Excellent points. All right. It's now 5:10 where I am. If there's no other immediate questions, I think we might be able to sort of wrap up with immense thanks. No, of course. And Sharon, did you want to add anything before we close out today?
I think just seconding your immense thanks. These were really fantastic, and I think that we learned a lot from them, and also have been inspired by them, and just really great to see everyone in the chat saying, oh, we really need to do this as well. So thank you for contributing so wonderfully to our first Building Resilient Communities webinar. We're now off to a great start. And thanks again to Erin and to all the other community of practice members who have helped out with this.
And we will be in touch about future webinar opportunities. So
Yeah, reach out to Flor, reach out to me. I think we can do wonderful things in New Mexico as well. Give us a call.
great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope everyone has a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Bye.
good day. Bye.